This video is going to talk about what historical archaeologists have to do before they excavate. So, how are they different from archaeologists that are excavating prehistoric sites? Well, the one thing that's different is they're working with additional resources. So, for instance, historical documents or oral histories or the structure itself. So historians study both primary and secondary sources. So the primary source is a source where somebody's actually written it or somebody's witnessed the actual document being signed or written. Secondary source is basically somebody who has interpreted the primary source. So where do you start? Let's say you find a property. And where do you start your research? Number one, does the property have historical significance? If it does, then we want to try to understand that property. How old is the property? Who lived there and when? Where are the boundaries of that particular property? Where is the land used in history? What kind of land use? Is there a potential for subsurface deposits such as wells or privies? Who is the property owned by? Through the years, who owned the property? So what's your research design? What do you want to know about this particular property? So again, before you can even start, does it have historical significance? What do you want to do with that? How does it fit into, let's say, San Diego history? Because this is where we're excavating. So pre-field research, the first thing we do too is we contact the South Coastal Information Center, and this is where we do a record search. We're going to try to find out who has done archaeology in the area before. What kind of records can we find? It's going to help us determine, what has already been done and what we still need to do. So research resources, and why I have Carmen Sandiego here is because we are detectives, and it's really fun to do this research. I'm going to talk about the Bureau of Land Management, how we can do some sleuthing there, the California State Library, county sources, local sources, mapping, National Register of Nominations. So first, BLM, Bureau of Land Management. Basically, it's a history of land patents, who has owned or developed those land patents through time with the federal government. And also BLM, you can find out so much more as well. Local sources, what do I have here? University libraries and special collections, local libraries, local historians. On one of our sites, we have a historian that's been wonderful to have. You don't always get that on archaeological sites with historic sites, so we're very, very fortunate to have her. Historical societies, get to know your local historical society people. And let's see, repositories of historic records and knowledgeable staff. Again, be nice to these people. They will help you. California State Libraries, you can find maps, census reports, voter registration, newspapers, photo archives, Sanborn maps, county histories, city directories, birth, death, marriage records. So these are all tools you can use to try to understand the people who lived in the particular dwelling that you're going to be excavating. Here are other ones: county resources, assessor and recorder's office, death and birth certificates, mapping as well. Sanborn, as I talked about before, fire insurance maps or historic topo maps. And I'm going to show you some examples of those. So, and also you want to know, was it ever listed on the National Register of Nominations? If it hasn't been, why? And is this a newly discovered site? Will it one day be? So another thing that historical archaeologists do as well are oral interviews. And why can we do that? Why is that different from prehistoric? Because sometimes you can find people that are still alive that lived in the area. Let's say when they were a child, it was, 100 years, not 100 years ago, they'd be really old. But let's say they were around in the 1930s or 40s, and you can interview them and get more ideas about what that community looked like at that time. So we're going to apply this now, this information that I just gave you, to what we're doing right now in Elfin Forest. And we're going to take these tools. So where we're excavating right now is, we're calling it the Elena and Parker Deer Lost Adobe, because that's the last name of the woman who actually built the adobe, or was responsible for buying the materials and building the material. So how did we find this? A property owner who had purchased a piece of property in Elfin Forest gave me a call and said, listen, I was scraping my property and I found the foundation of once was an adobe. I've been working with an historian and we have found out that this was the home of Elena and Parker Deer, she was a granddaughter of a very prominent family here in San Diego. So we went out and we explored, and then we had to decide, are we going to excavate here or not? All right. So before that, we're doing our research. We are getting maps together. Where's it located? This is an actual map of very prominent trails and roads. One of these roads is El Camino Real, right? How close was that? Where's it located? It's near Escondido. Where were they getting supplies to build this home? Escondido, we also have Oceanside, so it's very interesting to see where this particular adobe was located. We also have township maps and also aerial photography. This is fantastic. This is a 1928 photo that was taken, aerial photograph that was taken, and I don't know if I can show you. I can! How fabulous. So this is the structure. This is the adobe right here, and they were growing olives on their property. There's another section over here. This was another grove of olives as well, and there's another structure in this area. So that could be for future research. This is the oldest picture of this adobe, and we're finding that it was built around 1897. And the people that lived in it, it was Elena and Parker Deer and their 5 boys. This was not a large home. All right, so I told you that was 1895, 97. This is the 1930s. Boy, it deteriorated very quickly. Once you lose the roof on an adobe, it starts deteriorating. And this is the 1960s. You can tell by the hairstyle that this is the 1970s. Even more so, it has deteriorated. All right, so what are we doing here too? We're looking up ownership. So documentation, this document over here talks about the ownership of the first owner of that particular property, John Mentor. This one over here is saying basically that John Mentor is selling it to Elena and Parker Deer. We also have census records. Here we have that this is 18, let's see, where is this? Oh, it's 1900. This is Elena, this is actually Parker Deer, talks about his wife and their 5 boys, and on here as well they have Meta Woodson, and Meta Woodson was the school teacher for the area, so they were housing her. So all these wonderful things that you can find from sleuthing. Also, we have the school census for the Aliso school. We can see what families were in the area at the same time that the Deer family was there. Also, newspaper articles. This is talking about how Aliso Valley, that's what they called it at the time, we call it Elfin Forest today, what it was like, what were people doing in the valley, what were they producing, and it talks about the school as well. So all of these different lines of evidence really give us a good feeling for who's living in the area, what was happening, why were they there. All right, and I think this is my last slide. Yes, it is, so I'm gonna end on that. This is an image of Elena and Parker Deer. This is at her parents' home at Rancho Guajome. And then her father was Cave Couts and a very prominent family as well. So I hope you enjoyed this video on what historical archaeologists do before they excavate. And as I said before, it's different than if you were doing prehistoric archaeology in that you get to work with documents and do some sleuthing in libraries and historical societies. So thank you for watching.